We need to take a step back when we look at regulation, because regulation exists not because regulators want to be in the job, because there is a particular area that they need to put some controls in, because as I said earlier on, ultimately it's investor protection, it's consumer protection. Whether or not a certain regulators embracing RegTech, it gotta come in subsequent to them getting the regulation right. Because regulation is at the forefront, because you need to set your boundaries where people can operate first. Then RegTech is basically the technology that is supposed to help in the implementation process of a certain regulation. Implementation also include how do you enforce, how does regulator come in and enforce and say, hey, I'm serious about this, you better get this piece of regulations implemented properly, and so on and so forth. Now, for regulators to say, let's embrace RegTech, it's just a statement. It doesn't really mean anything. And I would say that most regulators wouldn't not embrace it, because if there's anything that's out there that help their licensee better comply with regulation, why not? It makes their jobs easier as well if you think about it, right? So that at least they know that, okay, everybody is embracing technology, and the trails and the record keeping and the state of compliance will always be better. So it's a win-win-win situation. Now, so whether some regulators are doing it more than others, obviously it depends on the needs of the market. I think there is no specific party that we can pinpoint to say, hey, regulators should take a lead in this, because that becomes overly passive. And from the market perspective, you do not want regulator to prescribe every single thing, because then there's no flexibility to maneuver, right? What regulators will need to set is the framework and the environment that is conducive for growth in a certain sector like financial services sector, or to reform the sector embracing technology. I believe regulators should be willing to explore these technology, because as I said, there are many verticals within the RegTech sphere. Yeah? So if you can't exactly say, let's just pick this tiny little thing and say, let's go with it. You got to embrace the concept that technology will help to achieve better compliance, but it's not going to get rid of compliance, or it's not going to remove the need to comply, and it's not going to get rid of responsibility and accountability. That's one part of it. And then for the market, obviously market is made up of the financial services providers, the banks and the financial institutions. I think these people will obviously need to experiment, because if you talk about a large bank, there are many tiny processes within the organization with many stakeholders in it. So, and different business lines. So how do you actually apply a certain technology across the board? Which I think the idea of trying to reform or transform the banks using RegTech solution is easier said than done. On the flip side, if you think about the evolutions of fintech startups and fintech companies that have been cropping up around the world, these smaller players potentially, I think, will be a better adopter of RegTech solutions, because they are small and they are typically very nimble. They probably want technology a lot more than the incumbent, because incumbent have got existing processes and legacy system that if you want to replace it, you got to rip the old thing out and put something new in. It's always a more difficult process to get through. Whereas for a fintech startup, for example, if they are going into the remittance space, robo-advisories and the likes, or even blockchain companies, it's probably easier for them to adopt something that is quite aligned to them in terms of the use of technology. So that's where I would say it's different parts of the market that needs to drive different things, but you will never get to a one party driving the whole thing. It's just like regulatory sandbox. A lot of countries have come out with regulatory sandbox where regulators will say, oh, we can experiment things around this box, but in the true sense of innovations and creativity, you don't set a box and say, sit inside this box and innovate. It's a bit strange. I'm not quite sure how it works, but that's what a lot of people are doing. Regulation is going to go one way, which is going to be up, right? There is no, because of the sophistications of all the transformations of the financial services sector, and the sophistication that increasingly, people are designing new products, they are coming up with new services that adds complexity. Now, when there is increased complexity in the service that's offered to the market anywhere in the world, it means regulators got to respond. So when regulators respond, how do they respond? If existing regulation is able to cover those new innovations and products that comes out, fine. If it doesn't, then it means that they must put in new regulation.